political leader of the National Transformation Alliance. Mr. Griffith, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Oh, good evening. Always my pleasure.
Just before we started, it's ironic. I said to you, if those were crutches behind you and you said they were swords, do they have any significance for you on a day-to-day basis?
No, that's our memory. These swords I had when I was in the military.
Yeah,
Swords, it's signifies a military officer. That is what you carry on parades as a military officer. That is seen
understand,
as, whereas
understand.
the other ranks will carry rifles. We will carry a sword.
Very interesting. Mr. Griffith, what was the mood today in the country given the event that took place today?
Well, unfortunately, it was totally taken over by two previously senior politicians storming the funeral, and
Ah,
that became the big talking point, rather
yeah,
than something that was so important. Where it is that you have a prime minister's a funeral for pri- um, previous Prime Minister Basio Pandey, and instead of persons trying to remember the good things about this man, what he achieved, if this could be used as something symbolic to unify the country, all it turned into is people. It became a lot of jokes and so forth,
yeah,
which was unfortunate. It really it dampened the whole concept of what that funeral, the benefit that should have been arrived. It just became a whole big comedy fest of two senior persons wanting to govern the country or lead the country or serve the country, and you saw it fit to actually try to storm, jump over railings to get into somewhere because you were not invited.
unfortunate. And speaking of which, Mr. Griffith, when you talk about leadership and being in positions of leading not just a party but a country as well, what's your takeaway from Mr. Basil Pandey as a statesman in Trinidad and Tobago?
No one is perfect. Basio Pandey will have his faults. What I have always tried to do is to, when I work with senior politicians, try to extract the positive things that I can see to help make me a better politician. So I have worked as the writer. I was the aide to then President A.N.R. Robinson. I worked as the military attaché for Basdio Pandey as Prime Minister for a limited time with Patrick Manning as Prime Minister, with Kamala Prasad Bisesa as National Security Advisor, with Keith Rowley as the Commissioner of Police. So each person will have different character traits. The one with Basio Pandey, what I looked at, he had this way of trying his best as possible, not to try to politicize situations. He will try to do what is best for the country. He will try to unite. He will not try to be blinded by division based on race and politics. And I looked at that. I looked at the way he can use his charisma to try to get persons to bind and understand the things that he would do. I understood his passion as a prime minister, and making sure that that passion can be used not for you to get over emotional, where it can turn into hatred, bitterness, anger, but one way it is you really want and have a great desire for success and to make things work. And that's what he did. He was able to, but it is you have someone like him, I mean, during even this period, with you look at the oil, at the value of the oil dollar at that time, the situation of us getting less than 100 murders for the year under his watch as prime minister and being chair of the National Security Council, being able to unify Trinidad and Tobago, where unfortunately now we are so divided because of race. Uh, I was able to extract that and look at it and utilize that as best as I can. It is not for anyone to copy or just piggyback on anyone else. Everybody will have the different
Mhm.
style. But definitely, he played a very big part in what's molding my character as a politician.
Very interesting. And Mr. Griffith, of all the topics and all the events and all the aspects of public life and public service, leading the National Transformation Alliance, what is your primary or main passion?
Definitely to unite Trinidad and Tobago. I know times people will say that what you want as a politician is just to get in government and to win and to defeat the enemy. I have been a soldier. I was a soldier for 17 years. I know what the enemy is. When I was in the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, we'll be leaving nightclubs and have to look under our vehicles because of improvised explosive devices. That was in the era with the IRA. I spent 6 months with the United Nations mission in Haiti, where people would have lost their lives. I was the youngest officer to serve Trinidad and Tobago during the attempted coup. So I understand what it is to have an enemy. I don't see politicians as being the enemy. I see them being as political opponents. So my intention has always been not to win an election, to defeat the enemy, but to try my best to unite Trinidad and Tobago. I tried my best to do that when I was Minister of National Security. I had no enemies in the opposition. I tried the same thing when I was Commissioner of Police, the enemies being those not having party cards, but criminal elements. And that is my intention. My intention is to try to find a way to deal with the damage that has been done to this country because of politics and politicians. They have gone out of their way to divide this country and to cause hatred, bitterness. And my intention is just to clean it up, to do damage control, and to bring back Trinidad and Tobago to how it should be.
Recently, someone was talking about one of the things that is affecting the country right now is the huge climb in the murder rate already for the year. And one of the things that is going on in the region right now is CARICOM is actually liaising with the United States to help bring gun smuggling under control. With Trinidad being so far south and always being considered a pivotal point between the north and the south, what do you think you as a leader could possibly do to help to bring this sort of change about that CARICOM is now proposing?
Well, CARICOM was way behind the 8 ball. That should have been done years ago. As Minister of National Security, I did that by liaising with the NYPD and others. As Commissioner of Police, it was the first time that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service actually formed a bilateral agreement with the NYPD. We were able to start bringing in the NYPD to train us in forming the gender-based violence unit, customer service training, and then by me as Commissioner of Police liaising with the NYPD Commissioner and also in Miami, the Miami Department of Police Chiefs, by forming some type of a communicational platform to provide both parties, both here in Trinidad and Tobago and abroad, whereas especially when it comes to those areas in North America where shipments will be coming into Trinidad and Tobago, for us to share information pertaining to, for example, if we are aware of gang leaders or criminal elements leaving Trinidad and Tobago to get across to the United States, letting the authorities be aware that this guy is arriving, so you can keep an eye on him, getting the United States to let us know these containers are leaving. There are some really questionable characters, because remember, the containers that leave the United States is not checked. They don't care, and I don't blame them, because it is the onus is on us. So, trying to hear Prime Minister Rowley try to basically throw blame on the United States and say that they have their job to do and they're not doing their job as much as they should to prevent illegal weapons. It's a cop-out. It has been a norm by politicians and law enforcement officers. When you can't get a job done, you blame society, you blame parents, you blame the community, you turn to Jesus and ask for divine intervention, as our Commissioner of Police is doing. And then you try to blame your allies by telling the United States they need to do more. They don't need to do more. We need to do more. We need to be able to have a proper dialogue with the United States to get information of possible certain elements that may be instrumental in bringing in the illegal weapons. But we do not check our containers properly. At least 7 containers leave our ports annually without being checked. That has nothing to do with the United States. So when these 7 containers leave our ports unchecked, what does that have to do with our international allies in North America? It's not. It's because of our failure to do our job. And that is what is important. I drafted it for the Prime Minister because he has a government and a cabinet that are totally clueless in understanding law enforcement. And it had to do with that of forming a border protection unit, finding qualified individuals from the police, the defense force, the customs, the immigration, have them properly polygraphed, covert operatives along the ports, making sure that we can ensure that that one night, that one rogue element in the customs, that one rogue element stevedore, that one rogue container driver, that one rogue security guard by the gate, that they all line it off to allow that container to leave unchecked. That is what we need to do. And the formation of that border protection unit, the Prime Minister totally ignored it. It gave the impression that, is it that you're really that incompetent, or is it that you really do not want to solve the problem? So that therein lies the problem. The police service in Trinidad and Tobago sees 800 odd firearms a year. That is all well and good. But as I said, if one container leaves our port with 4,000 weapons, that's 5 years of work done that will go right back to square one. So it is really based on us doing our job rather than trying to pass the buck and blame the United States. The United States Embassy confirmed with me that over 97% of the illegal weapons that enter our country come through the legitimate ports of entry, which again goes back to the point that it is not for the United States to do our job. It is good for that we will get their guidance and support and training. But charity begins at home, and we are not doing our own job.
Talking about borders and border control and monitoring our borders, how do you feel about the situation with Venezuela trying to assert its border expansion with the situation in Guyana? Does Trinidad, you think, have a pivotal role in coming to the aid of its neighbor in a situation like this?
Well, definitely. Had I been Prime Minister, I would not have shirked my responsibility as Keith Rowley did when it is that we said, get involved, get in dialogue. He said we are out of place. And then you have other prime ministers in other islands, further north, doing exactly that. And then he runs in there to now try to do as if he wants to play both sides. He wanted to have an element where he doesn't want to shake or affect his dragon deal with Venezuela. But in the same manner, he doesn't want to look like a sellout at the expense of CARICOM looking at him. Is that what you really intend to do? So he has been playing it in a very delicate manner. But instead of him actually doing what other prime ministers have done, take leadership, that is what Trinidad and Tobago have always been. We have been at the front as it pertains to major decisions made throughout CARICOM, especially as it pertains to security of CARICOM. He did not. He backed off. It showed cowardice. It showed him shirking his responsibility. And I just really hope that you don't try to play both sides. You'll end up like the dog on the bone. He needs to understand his importance as a prime minister. Because to date is Guyana, tomorrow it could be Trinidad and Tobago. And we can't expect just to wet your own house in the hope that we will not get burnt. So we need to rally. I am not in any way speaking about some degree of force to go into any type of battle. But again, it involves dialogue. For 15 years, Trinidad and Tobago had a very serious issue with La Guardia Nacional attacking our fishermen, seizing their fish, their nets. When I became Minister of National Security, I immediately got involved with Venezuela. I demanded that we have dialogue, that we converse, we understand our role and function, we look at our borders. And the La Guardia Nacional, after we signed a bilateral agreement between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela, they promised that the La Guardia Nacional said they will no longer come across into our waters. And that has held on for a few years since I was Minister of National Security. That is the type of proactive politics we need in Trinidad and Tobago. You don't just sit down and wait for problems to take place. You get involved, you move in there, and you try to form and establish something with true dialogue, but making it known that you're not just going to sit back and allow your brothers to probably be intimidated because you have your anticipation and your excitement of holding on to something because in the hope that is going to keep Trinidad and Tobago afloat for the next few years.
And recently, Prime Minister of Barbados, the Honorable Mia Mottley, has been very, very vocal on the international stage about the Caribbean's role in climate control. Where do you stand on this, Mr. Griffith?
Well, definitely. I mean, you can't just turn a blind eye and pretend that it doesn't exist. It is something that obviously is affecting everywhere in the world. So again, it is good that the Barbados Prime Minister continues to be at the forefront. She continues to be proactive. There are decisions that must be made and it must be taken into context towards the benefit of throughout CARICOM. So things along that line. And these things, it shows that we are not just participating in decisions being made towards the benefit of other countries. Sometimes we need to be at the forefront. We need to show our caliber, our worth, and we are not just a silent partner in decisions that are being made, whether you go to the United Nations or wherever. So, and I applaud such decisions. That is the type of leadership that CARICOM deserves.
What do you think are some of the things, if you can think of immediate, impactful solutions as in your role as a citizen and a statesman in the country, what are some of the things that we could do to start contributing to the control of the effects of global warming and that sort of thing going on, of course, around the world?
Well, I definitely would want to get into details because there are certain things that can be done immediately, but then people will automatically say, well, this can affect the productivity of a country. So you've seen it in certain major countries in Asia, where it is that the actions have taken place and it has affected the climate. There are certain things that are totally beyond our control, that you'll see, whether it's Sahara dust or so forth. But as it pertains to individuals, we as a country must always look at what can be done within here that can assist. On most occasions, the decisions that are made in climate control, it really happens to some of those larger countries, and it impacts on CARICOM. So we need to really and truly analyze whether it is that decisions that we make, is it towards the benefit of us, and not just look at the almighty dollar. Because as I said, many occasions, persons will backtrack and they will not look at the actions that are taking place because we need to be productive. But it has a rippling effect, and the world is actually they are getting the effects of it at this time.
One of the things going on globally as well, we see the legalization, the monetization, and the introduction of cannabis reform. You know, it's no longer at the stage where it's the questionable fellas on the block stealing a smoke and then the police swooping in on them. Speaking the other day with Mr. Gordon from Jamaica, where he is actually proposing the legislation of psychedelics by and large. Does Trinidad have enough information? Because it's been suggested that that's one of the things that's affecting the legalization and the monetization of cannabis. How do you feel that could take place in Trinidad on a productive level?
Well, we have amended the law where it is no longer illegal. It is something that, again, there's a control, and sometimes countries do this. There are several states in the United States that have gone along that line, making sure that so somebody with one marijuana joint on a block, he's no longer just going to be arrested. But again, it has a control to make sure that somebody just can't turn that and exploit it. So there is a negative impact to that. However, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, the opposition leader and political leader of the UNC, her concept is that she thinks that we may have gone too far, where we've reached a point where it has been exploited to the fact that this can obviously affect young minds, because it allows persons in their late teens now to have easy access to utilize marijuana. It can obviously affect your brain, and she is looking at the possibility of changing it to having it that those persons can only utilize it if they reach a certain age, I think probably over 25. So, and there is some justification to it. Sometimes political parties will make decisions as government to do this in the hope that it will generate some degree of national support by saying, oh, we're legalizing marijuana. But again, and by doing that, it will take away there's a lot of work that it took away from the police, instead of going to every single corner and arresting 3 or 4 young men, and then after you arrest them, you put them in prison for just smoking a joint. And now you're involved now with more hardened criminals, and based on our recidivism rate, which is very high, based on poor rehabilitation. So we have reached in a certain direction. Should we pull back somewhat? That is where it is. There's a lot of public consultation that needs to take place. But I think her initial comment, there's not been a heavy pushback. I think persons may have realized that there can be some value to it, and what we definitely don't want to do is to open that to such an extent that, because we do not want to make it so hard to try to enforce the law by one person having a joint, is it that we're going to continue to have young persons have easy access to marijuana that could obviously affect them in the long run.
If there is the introduction, because I don't know if we are ready in Trinidad to get there, if there is the introduction of vendors who will have the legal authority to sell cannabis and cannabis products, how do you educate people who, apart from medicinal use, who really might want to use it for recreational use? Is there a way to control and educate the dispensing of that type of materials to the public? Because one would say, listen, we get it. Another parallel that could be drawn is some people feel that they don't want sex education in schools because it will make young people feel that it's okay to have sex outside of marriage, which is one component of a viewpoint in society. But by not talking about it, are we still continuing to keep our young people in the dark? And by the time they figure it out and find out what's going on, they would have learned in terms of tribal knowledge and not a real standpoint of being educated as to how cannabis works.
Well, no, I don't think Trinidad and Tobago has reached or we are ready for that type of situation similar to what you'll have in the United States, where you'll have these vans with all type of advertisement. You swear it's like a snow cone, an ice cream van with all types of different marijuana that is available for you. I certainly would not, my personal views, I certainly would not want Trinidad and Tobago to go down that road, because you're in an environment where we make it mandatory to let the country be aware, and rightly so, of the dangers of persons smoking cigarettes. Every cigarette that is sold, you have an advertisement. Why would we now open that avenue to such an extent that we will probably have an on-the-shelf sale of marijuana? But what you're doing is just, so you're making the advertisements for cigarettes and showing the dangers of it from a health perspective, but then you're saying, well, it's okay, you could go ahead and you could smoke marijuana, and let's promote it and make it even easier and greater accessibility to persons. So I definitely would not want us to venture along that line. I don't think we have reached that position of desperation or demand for marijuana in Trinidad and Tobago at this time.
Every day we hear people talk about the amount of traffic. You now have to leave home so much earlier to get somewhere because of traffic. People have been saying for years, there are too many cars in the country. What are some of the things that you believe we could do to alleviate the traffic situation? Do we now restrict the importation of vehicles? Do we open up the priority bus route at certain hours to alleviate traffic? What's your view on this?
Well, what is certainly we don't do is just trying to find avenues to have flyovers and so forth. And when you do cost-benefit analysis, you ascertain that it wasn't worth it. And recently, we opened something in the Western Peninsula in Diego Martin for over 165 million TT dollars. And then when you look at the number of traffic of cars leaving Diego Martin to veer west to get into Caranage and vice versa, it is virtually non-existent. But it seemed to be a good avenue for politicians to be able to assist their financiers in trying to get a contract. And there's so much more that could have been done on the nation's roads. So we speak about traffic, but the fact is so many, before we even get to the traffic, our roads are such in a deplorable state. We have so many persons that are very low income, and they have to spend so much to try to repair their vehicles because of the faulty roads. And that is where we should immediately, first thing we need to do is to repair our roads. As it pertains to the traffic congestion, it again comes back to proper management. We had a highway patrol that has been disbanded. We had a system where we have over 17,000 cameras. When the Commission of Inquiry into the attempted coup, they explained the importance of having a national operations center to monitor the country to prevent us from any natural or man-made disaster. And by having that national operations center, we will to pinpoint and see exactly every time there's traffic, it's because of an incident, it's because of a situation. Yes, granted, they were going to get automatic traffic buildup every morning getting into Port of Spain between 7 and 9 a.m., similar to getting into downtown Miami or into Manhattan, God, every weekday. But, but as it pertains to Trinidad and Tobago, on most occasions, the traffic congestion is because of lack of management. If you have the operation, which is what we did when I was Commissioner of Police and Security Minister, we utilized the National Operations Center. As soon as we pinpoint a traffic light has shut down, we immediately now go there because we see exactly what is causing the traffic. We analyze it, whether it is an accident or traffic light down. We can immediately send police vehicles there, send a fire truck to remove the debris if it's an accident, to get police officers at the location to direct traffic if the light is down. That is how you can immediately deal with a situation. It doesn't happen anymore. So you will have a gridlock because of probably 3 cars parked up in one area for 45 minutes because they're dropping their children to school and they're just staying in the car with their child. And nothing is being done to deal with it. So the traffic will back up now for several miles because of a simple situation that you could have picked up through that National Operations Center monitoring the cameras. So that is how we can deal with it. Likewise, if we had air surveillance, similar to what you have in many cities in the United States, the air surveillance would be able to pick up and ascertain exactly what is causing the backup, what is causing the gridlock, and then send relevant units, be it ambulance, fire services, police services, to be able to deal with that situation to make sure that you can clear the traffic as quickly as possible. That plays probably over 90% of the problems with traffic congestion in Trinidad and Tobago.
So what you're saying is, with the use of the National Operations Center and more fine-tuned management, you believe that we could bring this traffic behemoth under control for the citizenry of Trinidad and Tobago?
Yeah, definitely. It's not coincidental that in my 3 years as commissioner, you are hardly seeing traffic. Even a carnival Saturday, persons on a carnival Saturday, they will spend 4 hours to get around the savannah. After I became commissioner of police on a carnival Saturday, you spend no more than 15 minutes because we were able to pinpoint the problem, look at where the gridlock was, and be able to find situations to rectify it. And that is all you need to do. So as soon as you can immediately pick up traffic congestion, persons will either go online, make the report. We will see it from the National Operations Center through the 17,000 cameras, and then immediately deploy units to clear it. That no longer happens. So there will be an accident, and those vehicles will stay there for hours, and traffic will go back up. And it's not right. This is not a banana republic. So those are the systems that can and should and would have been done previously. I'm not saying you can eliminate traffic.
Yes.
Obviously, every time that between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. going into Port of Spain, you're going to get traffic because you're speaking about tens of thousands of cars trying to get into one road. And so that will happen. But I'm speaking about in general, there have been so many other situations where you will get gridlock, and it is not the norm. Once it's not the norm, because of all the cars going into one specific area, as I said, whether it be a light down, whether it be a traffic an accident, or persons just parked up on the roadway and not clearing it, those are the things that are required. But it requires good policing, it requires communication, it requires dialogue, and it requires an immediate response to rectify the problem. That is what is required to deal with it. The Ministry of Works and Transport, working in tandem with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the National Operations Center, can very well play a very big part in reducing the traffic congestion throughout the country.
Well, Mr. Griffith, it sounds like you're prepared to take the reins and to take Trinidad and Tobago to that next level. Are you prepared for the sleepless nights, the phone calls at all hours of the morning, and the nation looking solely to you for what's next?
Well, again, as Commissioner, my wife couldn't understand why I will tell the whole country and give them my phone number, my private number, and say, if you have any concern, contact me directly. That is what is required. We have too often politicians in Trinidad and Tobago, as soon as they get into that position, you don't see them for 5 years, they disappear. And then 4 months before the election, they start walking from house to house. I did it as during the recent local government election. I had 31 candidates, and I went up to the hills in St. Lucian Road, in Caranage, in Diego Martin, in Maraval, in Lavantil, Sawa, Arima, Barataria. I'm hoping in the next life I could be a politician in Barbados where the land is flat, so there are not so many mountains. It caused me to lose about 20 pounds, so that was a good thing. But that is what is required. You can't just do it during an election campaign. So my intention is to continue to do that throughout this year, and make yourself accessible. Accessibility is critical as a politician. What is also important is for you to stop believing that you know everything. We see that situation with this present Prime Minister. He has refused to take and embrace expertise from other persons if they don't have his party card. I have no intention to go down that road. I am prepared to be the dumbest person in the room if I have to in certain situations, but my concept will be that of leadership and directing. I need the best experts, whether it be in health, education, the economy, national security, finance, regardless of your political card. Anytime you go political party card, you lose 70% of the population. And that is what happens when governments get in. They look for the persons with their party card, and then we have something known as state boards. So you have 120 odd state boards, and some of these individuals who run the state boards, they are as clueless as they come. They do not have the capability, the knowledge, the expertise in that state board, but because they were closely aligned to the prime minister or because they were a friend of a financier, they run a state board, and we wonder why the state board will lose hundreds of millions of dollars per annum. That is how you transform a country. You transform a country by trying to get the best minds available, put them in the most strategic positions based on their qualification, knowledge, and expertise, and that is how you transform a country.
Mr. Griffith, you've given us a lot to think about, of course, tonight. And as usual, thank you so much for the detailed discourse, for your contribution, for always looking ahead and thinking that you are definitely placed in a position that you feel that you could contribute to the forum of public service and leadership. I wish you all the best. Fingers crossed, let's see what's going to happen. But thank you so much for the information and the sharing of your perspectives. It's given a sort of human touch rather than a list of here is what I want, here's what I'm going to do, and we thank you for that.
My pleasure.